another episode of Beyond the Canon, the Writer's Room.
Yeah.
We are so, oh my God, I got my girl in the room. I'm so excited. Satinder Chohan is with us, yo. And so we have all the applause.
Literally,
Hey,
I feel like you should be hearing bashment horns right now. Like Sim's intro is like, boom, boom, boom. Like, it's very cool.
No,
Hi, Satinder.
People might not know this, but Satinder and I go way back into time. But like, it's such a pleasure to have you. It's so lovely to see you. I can't wait for us to see each other in person.
No, likewise, preferably in LA.
anytime, babe, anytime.
Yeah.
All right, before we get started, let me just do a little intro of Satinder. So everybody, if you do not know, you should know. And if you know, you know. All right. So Satinder Chohan is from Southall, West London. She completed her BA in English Language and Literature at King's College London and her MA at Yale University in the US. A journalist and documentary researcher, assistant producer turned playwright from Southall, you know, and her plays include Zameen, which is Cali Theatre UK tour, KabaddiKabaddiKabaddi.
We love that one.
KabaddiKabaddiKabaddi. Pursued by a Bear, which is also Kali tour, and Made in India with Tamasha Theatre, also a UK tour, and 1984 Vibrant Festival, Finborough Theatre. And as a writer in residence at the Centre for Family Research, Cambridge University, she wrote youth play Half of Me, and that was Tamasha and Generation Arts, and also the lyric Hammersmith, and also Made in India tour. She received the Off West End.com's 2013 Adopt A Playwright Award and the 2017 ACTA Award for Best Production for Made in India. Audio dramas include Garlands, which is BBC Radio 3, Steam Rises, which is Tamasha and National Archives, and audio and play adaptation of The Girl of Ink and Stars and Secret Stories by Sparks Arts. Now, working with local families in Leicester. In 2016, The Guardian Fourth Estate Prize shortlisted her play, her short story Chet. Apologies. They shortlisted her short story Chet. She is currently developing plays including Lotus Beauty with Hampstead Theatre about multigenerational British Asian women and Empire of the Mind, which is Sphinx 30 Initiative, and Kali about Britain's imperial past and legacy. Short film Bussing and Pined, a novel about Punjabi diaspora.
Wow. That's a lot.
Oh my God, that is a lot. Aish. You know what, Satinder, would you have done less with your life if you knew I was going to have to read it?
I know, everything. I thought it was going to be written, so I should have kept it written.
No,
we live for it. We live for it. We love to celebrate all the amazing, wonderful things that you have done, and we love sharing them. And it's really spectacular. But welcome, Satinder.
Welcome to the Writer's Room. It's so great to have you. And you know what? I just feel like so proud of you and all your accomplishments. I'm just looking, I'm reading through it again. I'm just like, oh my gosh, Satinder, you've been busy.
Amelia, you were there right from the start.
Right. That's right. And that's why it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful to celebrate you in this way. It's so beautiful that, you know, we don't condense it down. I don't think that that's what we should do. I think we should say all of your accomplishments and all of your awards, girl. I see you. This is huge. And like, I would love, you know, some of the things, you know, I'm going to learn, even though we know each other and we've also been speaking, and Saru's been involved in conversation. Saru's met you now, and like this, it's like a sisterhood. This is a sisterhood right now. Yes. It's so beautiful that I think. But one of the things I would love to just for us to start with is, I'm always intrigued by pathways, you know, how people get to do what they do, and we've all had multiple pathways, and this is something that I have to keep reminding people in the sector, you know what I mean? Like when they meet us and when they meet a particular person who's a creative, especially, they like to kind of put us in a singular box and say, well, you're an actor, or you're a writer, and you do this. And actually, it's so important for us to place a spotlight on your journey, right? So from journalism to playwriting, can you just talk a little bit about how that came to be and why that came to be, I guess?
Oh my God. Well, talking of journeys, it goes way back to when I was a little girl, and I used to basically run off. I used to spend a lot of time at my grandparents' house in Southall, and there was on one end of the road, we had a cemetery where I used to play with my mates, and we used to play in the graveyard. Now, the playgrounds, we had the graveyard. And then on the other side of the street, at the end of the street, was a library. So I had a cemetery and a library, and I spent so much time in that library, just reading books. And that was sort of like my solo time. My friend's time was in the graveyard, solo time was in the library. And that was the place, I think, for me, where I just discovered the power, the magic and wonder of words. And I'm not from a literary background. I'm from Southall's a very immigrant, working class, diverse community. We're a very working class family. So anything by way of books, those were things that I discovered for myself. And I would just sit in that library for hours and hours. And that's where I first dreamt of being a writer. But it's been a really long journey. And after I graduated, I knew that was the thing that I really wanted to do, but I didn't have the confidence to do it. I didn't have the confidence nor the courage to do it. And I ended up, I was sort of toying with the idea of possibly becoming an academic. I did my MA in the States, and I was like, maybe I continue this. But I always wanted to do something creative, and I thought if I end up doing a PhD, I'm just going to get trapped. I'm going to get trapped. And in terms of my writing, it was already really academic. And I thought, if I want to be a writer, I've got to just break it right now. So I came back to England and I started editing a magazine called Second Generation, which was an Asian arts and style and culture magazine that came up out of the whole kind of Asian cool scene, which was like Talvin Singh. It was around that time, Nitin Sawhney, and it was a real moment of sort of cultural awakening for second generation British Asians like myself. And I felt like I had spent all that time in the States, and I'd come back, and it was like suddenly you just discover who you are, where you fit in, and you realize that you have a community of people around you, a community of creative people around you, where you belong, and they sort of understand the struggles that you've been through growing up in Britain, which can be an alienating place at the best of times. And so I was there for a while, and I ended up editing another magazine, sort of just circling, not really doing the creative thing. And then I ended up becoming a documentary researcher after that, because I was really into documentaries. And I think the interesting thing about that phase is that coming to this point, I know that it's all about storytelling, whether it's sort of factual storytelling through journalism or factual storytelling through documentary. I love stories, and I love sort of exploring different mediums. So I ended up on that hit series, BBC One series, Who Do You Think You Are? And I was basically researching Meera Syal's family history. And I was sent to the Punjab for a month by myself, ahead of the rest of the crew, to go and research her family history. And it was the first time that I'd been back to, and Punjab is my ancestral homeland. And it was the first time I'd been back by myself, and I had a car, and I went to my mum's village, and I went to my dad's village, and I met my great uncles, and I met my great aunts. And
wow,
it was such an incredible experience to be able to go back by myself and just see everything through my eyes as an adult. And you go back with this very romantic kind of idea of what your ancestral homeland is, and we've grown up with the Punjab with its kind of golden, lush golden and verdant fields. And, you know, and I went back and it was like that. It was emotional. It was incredibly emotional to be there. But that's also the place where I learned about the spate of farmer suicides that were happening around that time. And they were happening in Punjab and they were happening all over India. And I was so affected by some of those stories that when I came back, I just felt really compelled to write the story of those farmers. And that was the thing that ultimately kind of pushed me into becoming a writer. And it was that compulsion. And it was almost like the confidence didn't matter, the courage didn't matter. It was like the conviction that actually I have to tell this story. And I put pen to paper. And I'm not from a theatre background. And, you know, even at university, I think I studied drama, but I hardly ever went to the theatre. I had no connection to theatre whatsoever. And I think I really wanted that story to be a film, but I didn't know how to write scripts. And I've always really believed that theatre is just such a great training ground for writing film scripts. Rigorous, it's a really rigorous and thorough art form. And I think that was one of the reasons why I was like, I'm going to write this as a short play. And I wrote it as a short play. And then Carly, where Samelia was working at the time, they had put up this call out for short plays, and I submitted this. I'd never written before, but I was like, I've got to tell this story. I don't care how I'm going to do it. I'm just going to try. And Carly accepted it, and I ended up getting onto the writing program, and they eventually produced my first play, which was the story of a cotton farmer in Punjab, in globalizing Punjab, and it was all about the sort of chemical and corporate farming that has wreaked havoc across Punjab and made it this kind of, you know, it's a climate change and environmental catastrophe. And that was how I became a playwright. And
that's incredible, Satinder. Like, you know what? You've just like, you have, and I was going to ask you that because I never knew how you even found out about Carly Theatre Company. Like that was one of my questions. I was like, how did you even, we never spoke about that. We never spoke about like how that came to be. So look, I'm gonna stop there, but let's talk about that. What we'll do is, I know Saru's got a burning question that she wants to ask you. We'll definitely circle back to that because that is definitely something I want to know.
You know, Satinder, I absolutely love Southall. Like when I was in high school, my mom randomly moved us to Uxbridge, like for no reason. Like I genuinely have no reason to this day. But she randomly moved me to Uxbridge, and it was like, boom! There was like this incredible world that just like opened up for me, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is spectacular. I mean, can you tell me a little bit about this sort of community and, you know, just how much fire it is? Because it is.
I mean, do you know, Southall is like the butt of so many jokes because it's, you know, this rundown kind of immigrant town, but some of us from here are so proud to be from Southall. And my grandfather, he came to Southall in the 1950s, so we've basically been here for over 60 years or something, and we're one of the few families, like most of my extended family have moved out to grassier pastures, greener and grassier like Uxbridge, but we are the one family who are still here because we love it. And it's, you know, my mother doesn't speak English, she still speaks Punjabi. Punjabi is, you know, and we speak to her in Punjabi in the house. So one of the reasons why we never moved was because it's so easy for her to get around in the community. You know, she can go to the Gurdwara, she can go to the temple, she can go to the shops and speak Punjabi. It's the first language of Southall, right? So it's really easy for her to just move around. And that was primarily the reason why we have never ever left. I've sort of come and gone, but I have always come back to Southall because there is such a strong sense of community here. Diversity, you know, we've sort of, you know, we've got immigrants from every just you know, sort of Africa and Asia, from lots of different communities from all around the world who have taken sanctuary in Southall. You know, I think there's a collective trauma and pain that has been exercised through this community. You've got, you know, from Somalia, from Afghanistan, from Syria, Nepal even, you know, and it's really a place where people who have experienced a lot of sort of global conflict and struggle have kind of converged in one spot and one place. And where, you know, we're quite bound as a community, and I think it's a really welcoming community, and it's that spirit. I think it's just got a real kind of, it's got a spirit of real kind of community and solidarity, especially when I was growing up. Like, I grew up in Thatcherite Britain, and Southall really kicked against Thatcher's.
Yeah, it is so politically charged, you know. Yeah. I think that it has like just and I say rebellious in the most positive way, you know, just knowing who it is, standing up for what they believe in, and just being so outspoken and so unapologetic. I get that sense from Southall. It's just like, this is who we are, and don't you dare try to oppress us. It really has that real fire in its belly, as Saru was saying, in terms of the fire of the place.
Yeah, it's got a very strong sense of self, you know, and I think that's really amazing, considering that it is such like a lot of people from all over the world sort of coming together and still creating something that essentially is a unified identity, really. I absolutely love it. And also the food is really good.
Lots of different sort of cuisines here. I think you're right. You know, I think people here really stand up for each other. They stand alongside each other. And, you know, for me, I know that my writing is so inspired by this community, and it's infused with the political spirit of this community. So it's so important for me, even if I'm away for a little bit, to be rerouted back here. I've always sort of left, but I've come back, and I that's a constant for me. And it's a grounding. It reminds me of who I am. It reminds me of where I'm from.
Exactly.
Like, yeah, it's essential in terms of who I am as a writer and as a person.
Yeah, absolutely love that. Love that. It's so important. And I am a true believer that we have many homes. We just have many homes as global citizens that we are. But I really wanted to circle back to Cardi Theatre, right? Because I want to know, like, what attracted you to Cardi Theatre, you know, bar the fact that, okay, so people who don't know what Cardi Theatre is an organization that's dedicated to developing new plays that are written by South Asian female writers. So what attracted you? I mean, I know what attracted me to the place. But because I actually did, for those who don't know, I did a placement. So I was on the fast track arts management course that Independent Theatre Council ran. They don't run anymore. It's such a shame, because it was a fantastic course on arts management. And a part of the course is that you get placed. You can choose where you do a placement. And I chose Cardi Theatre Company because I was really wanted to work in a new writing development organization. And also I really wanted to, as always, want to be a part of providing a voice from people in Black, Asian and POC communities. So for me, it was like a no-brainer that when I saw Cardi Theatre as one of the listed organizations that we could have a placement, that's why I chose Cardi. But let's talk about you, Satinder. Why did you choose Cardi Theatre Company?
Really interesting to me, because I didn't know how you ended up. I just thought you were you'd been there forever, Samelia. I was like,
they employed me. Yeah, they employed me.
It was so lovely, because I think for me, when I came back and I started writing that play, it was a case of, where do I send it to? And I felt like, and then I heard about Carly. I don't know, I can't remember. We must have had the internet in those days. I mean, it was so long ago. It was like,
we did have the internet, though. We did.
2000s. I'm like, was it Stone Age? No. So I must have looked, and Kali obviously came up, and it was purely for that, because it was a theatre for South Asian women, and that was the thing that drew me there in the first place. And I tell you, from the moment that I submitted that short play, I felt like I had found my creative community. And to this day, like, I'm doing something for Kali at the moment again. And they have been, along with Tamasha, for me, they have been the constants in a very turbulent sort of writing journey. You know, I've worked with established theatres, I've worked with diverse theatres, community theatres, youth theatres, but we all know how difficult it is to get a foothold in this profession. And the one thing that has been so wonderful in those periods of sort of ebb and flow of sort of, you know, the fallow and fertile periods of work that we have, is that there has always been a Kali and there's always been a Tamasha that I can sort of, you know, I go back to. It's like a home in a not entirely sort of always friendly British theatre scene, you know.
Diplomatically, by the way.
I'm trying to say it as diplomatically as possible, but you know, it is, and I think it's given so many writers like me, those are the kinds of theatre companies that, God, thank God,
yeah.
Like, I'm so grateful for the work that they did, that you guys did with Kali in all that time, you know, because without that we would not have had a place, and a place to tell the stories that basically other theatre companies were not interested in.
Yeah.
Have we lost Saru?
Yeah, she'll come back though. I think the internet is playing up. You know, we're doing this via Zoom.
No. Oh, we lost Saru. But yeah, I think, you know, that's the most important thing about theatre companies. Like, they understood those stories. You know, I took Zameen there and it was understood. Yeah. You know, I took it to other places and people were like, what's this? Exactly. Not interested. You know, and now it is the source of like a massive global protest movement.
Yeah.
And that shutting the door on those stories, that's the kind of experience that writers like me, creatives like us, are so used to. And yeah, just to know that we have theatre companies that understand the shorthand of where those stories come from and why we need to be.
Exactly, definitely. And I would say that, you know, I actually remember reading Zameen, like an early draft, and definitely being one of the people that were in favor of it from the moment I read it. I just felt that it was so strong. You know, if we're going to be really honest, you know, there was a lot of submissions, and some of them, you know, were stronger than others. Do you know what I mean? And I think that, you know, for me, I'm always intrigued by writers, and I don't know if this is fair to say, because I think there are some really strong plays that are autobiographical, and we need those stories too, don't get me wrong, but I'm always intrigued by when a writer, their first play isn't from personal experience. It's how I felt about Liberian Girl. And it's exactly how I feel about when, you know, when I came across Zameen. I was like, this really stands out. It stands strong, and for, you know, we're going to make sure that it's available to everybody, because I think it's just such an important piece that should be published.
Exactly, and that's part of it, isn't it? It's part of it, because we had so many issues getting it published all that time ago, and we've had this conversation, you and I, and I know that I've been in theatre for, oh my God, for almost 15 years. I mean, definitely over a decade, and it's just become par for the course, where you have the closed doors, and you just have, whether they're, I don't know, theatres, artistic directors or publishers or critics who don't understand it. Oh, hi, Saru, you're back.
Oh my goodness, that was a saga. Oh my God. So sorry, guys.
We're glad to have you back, Saru. Sorry, Satinder, continue. Sorry.
Well, no, that's okay. Yeah, so just saying that, you know, to have theatre companies that understand what the essence of those works are, as opposed to the publishers, and you know, that's what I was saying, that publishers, critics or artistic directors who don't get your work. Like I've had horrendous experiences, like real horrendous experiences, where it feels like those stories are worthless. The stories that you are trying to tell are worthless. And I feel like it's really it's so tragic and sad that that story is still relevant today.
Yes.
In a way, it's also underlines for me the contrast between then and now in terms of its place in theatre, and the fact that it wasn't published back then, or it wasn't taken as seriously beyond our community in a way. I think that just says everything about the work that we offer. And, you know, sometimes we are ahead of the game in a way. And that's why publishers and people in mainstream theatre need to listen to us, because we know what's happening within those communities. You know, we know on a very, very deep level the stuff that is going to transpire however many years hence. You know, we live there, we breathe there, and we know what's going on. So don't just hear us, you know. So that's hard. I think that's really hard, is that sort of silencing, not being heard. That's a real frustration, I think, for creatives like us.
Oh, definitely, definitely. And you're so right. I'm really happy to hear how you've just spoken, and it's so important that we do have those organizations, we do have, you know, our companies, and we need to continue to make sure that they're invested in, and we also need to make sure that we go out and we see the work, and we champion not only sort of the writers but definitely the theatre companies as well. So yeah, thanks for that, Satinder. Saru, back.
I have no idea where we are, but I agree, Satinder. No, I think it's actually like, it's one of the things that I'm really like worried about lately. Not necessarily because I don't think our stories aren't valid and all of that stuff, but also because just I'm finally in a position where I get to choose the kind of storytelling I want to tell. And, you know, and like with my film production company, and, you know, I keep getting these incredible stories that come my way, and I think, oh my God, this is amazing, or I've never seen this before. But you do have to start thinking about, you know, how am I going to sell it to like distributors? How am I going to get people to market an audience, to an audience that I wanted to go to? And it's like, these stories are amazing and they need to be out there. And sometimes we are ahead of the curve, you know, like we're thinking things that, and making things and creating stories that need to be told in a very urgent kind of way right now, not later, or when you're ready, or when it's finally for you, or when you are able to understand it through your lens, you know. And it's quite interesting to sort of hear you say that, because clearly your story was very, very relevant. And clearly, I mean, obviously we're back here again, and it's still sitting right in the middle of everything that is happening in the world. And it's like, but why isn't it published? Why doesn't it exist in this kind of way? And why are we being disheartened when we are trying to give people really amazing things?
What I would say is that, just in terms of like another way of looking at it, which we know that I'm not excusing anything. Let me just make that really, really clear. I'm not excusing anything. I think that, you know, we're all in agreement here in terms of not having the right people in those decision-making roles. And I think we're all in our own way, you know, trying to sort of rectify that. But I do think that there's always an opportunity, and to never give up on your work, never give up, because like, you know, it's such a beautiful full circle, really, you know, just us having this conversation about Zameen, your first play. And the fact of the matter is that there is potential here. There's such potential for it to be published. There's such potential for it to be revived because of what's happened in the world, sadly, but also it gives an opportunity for the theatre community to learn about, to be more conscious of what's happening in different parts of the world, and also what's happening here, because I think people just assume because it's happening somewhere else, it's not happening on your doorstep. That couldn't be furthest from the truth.
Exactly. And you know, that was, I mean, that was what was so, it's so I mean, I can't tell you how interesting it is for me to compare now sort of back to the responses that I was getting from a wider theatre community back then, and being told that that play back then, I remember one comment, it's not universal enough because it's set in Punjab, it's set in India, and just thinking, how can you say that this, you know, this story of the small farmer, we're living in a globalizing sort of world where we have sweatshops, where, you know, we are these kind of privileged, entitled consumers in the West who rely on low paid, low cost labor from other countries, like workers in other countries, to provide us with products, you know, the material stuff of our lives, these cheap, fast, efficient products, whether it's a pair of trainers, and you know, this is where my play Made in India came from, whether it's a pair of trainers, a smartphone, or a baby, right? We rely on those workers. We are connected. We are globally connected. And it's that sort of, the thing that was so amazing to me was, you know, farmers, like, look at the food systems that we sort of rely on. You know, we rely on them as producers to provide our food, and it's coming in from other countries. It's not just we're living in this little, you know, our little Brexit island. We are reliant on other countries, other nations, other workers. And it's that I think that's been the real problem in theatre as well, is this parochial mindset that the theatre makers, sort of theatre practitioners, and people who are in positions of influence and the power to change things, they haven't wanted to challenge their audiences. You know, they could have been challenging their audiences with more diverse work. It's like we grew up, okay, all three of us grew up where we have had to make the leaps of imagination when we have watched
constantly
or seen plays, you know, that are produced by white creatives. We have to make those leaps of imagination every single time, right? From our own experience. Yet that was not, to reciprocate that has not been encouraged in a creative way in this country, right? And we know,
and that's the main problem. I have such an issue with the term colorblind casting. I have such an issue with that, because what does that mean? What does that mean? Anyway, I could go on.
These are the frustrations of it. And it's just like, these are the areas where we could just be pushing people to expand their thinking and their imaginations and their minds. And instead it is a parochial mindset, because, oh my God, that place is too far away. Those stories are too far away. They've got nothing to do with, they've got everything to do with us. Everything.
Exactly. And I think, again, it's from the perspective of people that don't look like us, and that's what it is. And I think, unfortunately, those particular gatekeepers, you know, if they're not center in the storytelling, if they're not if it's not from that mindset, that perspective that they can relate to, then in their minds, like you said, it's something that is not as important, universal, all of those words, really. Do you know what I mean? And so you're so right about that, Satinder. But I'm really happy in the play, I don't know if we've mentioned the title, but Zameen is the play that we're talking about, that is inspired by the farmers in India, and it's such a fantastic play. And that's the play that's Satinder's first play that she wrote, and that's the play that I had the privilege of working on as an assistant director. I still have flashbacks of us sitting at Soho Theatre, and literally, as the play's being rehearsed in front of us, just having like a little conversation in the stalls.
All that time ago. It's so mad, isn't it? And it's so mad that we come full circle at this time when that farmers movement is just, it's all escalated again. And it's incredible that I'm talking talking to you again. I find that all a bit like, whoa.
I want to talk about your journey again, but just in terms of like, so from that play of writing Zameen, how has your writing process changed? How has it evolved since that time? Because that was your first play. Like you said, you didn't come from like a drama school and you know, that sort of conventional route in to sort of working in theatre. So how did your writing evolve as you went on to write all the plays, award-winning plays that you've written?
Interesting question. And the really odd thing about Zameen is that it was written in a style that I don't think is necessarily indicative of my style, but it was written in a deliberately kind of folksy way. It was almost, wasn't quite like Lorca, but it tried to assume that sort of a style. So it was a Punjabi folksy style that was written in almost an English translation of the Punjabi. So I was trying to, the characters were thinking, they were basically speaking in English but thinking in Punjabi, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So it was quite an affected sort of lyrical style, I'd say. And so when I did KabaddiKabaddiKabaddi play, I think it was a little bit more naturalistic in terms of dialogue and writing, and the plays subsequently were about exploring my voice. And I tend to write, like I overwrite, I write a lot, and my ideas are always really big, and I'm like all about the world and all these crazy like global connections. And it's really interesting because I remember having this conversation, discovering this thing about myself, that most writers, I don't know whether this is just an awful generalization, but a lot of writers basically start from that very small detail of maybe a character or a scene, and then their play grows out of it. Whereas for me, I do the reverse, and I start with the world. I start with this huge world, and I basically try to hone in. I need my setting. So with Zameen, I had the cotton fields. With Made in India, it was the fertility clinic. It was surrogacy, commercial surrogacy in the world. And then it's like zoning in, who are my characters? Who are the people within it? And then going down to the detail. And sometimes just because there are deadlines and not enough drafts, you never get to the detail mastery. But what I have learned is that my plays are very layered, they can be very intense, and they do need a lot of drafts. But I think what I'm really starting to get on top of now and understanding a lot more is that blend of the personal, the political, and the poetic. I feel like that is my voice. That is the voice that's coming through a lot. So where the early stuff was very kind of didactic, polemical, political, I think I'm starting to learn how to blend those three kind of elements a lot more. And that's kind of the challenge for me now, is to compress it into a play that isn't heavy and overbearing, but you know, like, where's the lightness? I think it's about trying to find the lightness within that. So compressing it enough, but finding a storytelling that is light enough to carry all of that. So it's been really exploratory, you know. It's been a long journey where it's been like trying to discover. And I'm also at a point where I feel like I've started to diversify into other creative mediums as well now. Right. So it's, I was
going to ask you that.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting thing, is I feel sort of confident in, I mean, obviously I'm still learning masses, okay, I'm still learning so much about playwriting, but I feel confident enough that I've got enough of an idea that I can diversify into other forms of storytelling and start exploring those as well. Because I am fascinated by, like I was saying at the beginning, I feel in essence I'm a storyteller, and it's almost like we have so many stories that we all want to tell, right? So many untold stories, and it's almost like, what's the best medium to tell this particular story? Yeah. And to be able to fit a story into whichever medium it might be, I think that would just be so exciting, rather than just kind of, it's going to be theatre from here on in, because there are some things that are not, they're sort of bigger, it's like the the book that I'm working on, that idea is just too big for theatre in a way. It needs the scope and creativity and the space of fiction to develop in a different way, you know.
I feel like Zameen should be a film. I'm gonna just
Yeah.
put that out there. I'm gonna put that out there. I know I'm a bit biased, but it should be a film.
I feel like, you know, yeah, and I felt like it always should have been, but I didn't have the skills at that point, so
It's
it was
not
like,
too late though.
It's never too late. It's never too late. And I think if you look at it with the optimism that Sim was kind of, hinting to about when the right time is right and when things come full circle, maybe it needed to be a play in order for it to be anything else.Maybe this is just the journey it was supposed to take.
very true. Wise words, Saru. No, you're quite right. Exactly. And I think it is, there's something about, sort of different creative mediums and exploring through one and then sort of transferring maybe to another and seeing if a story is a better fit somewhere else, or and I think that's just, as a writer, that's so exciting and such a challenging thing, and I just feel like I'm at that point where that's the thing that really, really excites me right now.
Saru, do you want to jump in, or I'm ready to go for another question, but I'm gonna give you some space.
No. I actually want to touch up on that because you've been speaking to your writing styles and how you've sort of developed and grown as a writer. I was hoping that maybe you could offer up some advice for our up and coming newbies. We did a live recently, and one of the things that came up was essentially was just what practical sort of ways can you really approach a career in writing as a newcomer, and I was hoping that you could share.
Wow. All I would like to say from the outset, it's been tough. I think it is an incredibly tough profession, or to pursue, but I think if you feel passionately about it, I think you've got to love it. I think you have to have a passion for it to deal with those ebbs and flows. I think you have to be quite accepting of the ebbs and flows, and it's difficult, and it's been difficult at the best of times. But my advice would be this, and I think I'm a little bit different and a little bit extreme, because I'm not married, I don't have kids, I don't have a car, I don't have a house, I don't have material things, and everything in my life has kind of been streamlined towards writing. And in a way, sometimes I think, oh my God, I have this like monastic kind of devotion to it, and I think that is very extreme, but that's how I feel, and that's the only way that I feel that writing really fits in my life. And I love the kind of having a spiritual approach to it, where it's my kind of everything, and the thing I get, I feel like it's a really kind of sacred space. And so I'm happy to like not earn at certain points of the year, and then I'll do my passion projects during those points of the year. I rely on my family. I sort of my sister has a space, a room where I go and stay, or I come to my parents where I also have a room. So I don't have a room of my own. So what I would say, because I've done
advice,
I love it. I'm living for it.
Do it. So my advice would be, get a job on the side, right? Get a job that financially sustains you. I think that's really important. I've never quite found the job that financially sustains me on the side. So I've been completely reliant on writing as an income. I do little bits of teaching and little bits of research on the side, but generally it's the writing. So for me, it's about craft. It's been about developing my craft, developing my projects, and really just throwing myself kind of wholeheartedly into my writing. And that has been, so the onus for me has been on developing my voice and my craft. And I would say, find your voice, find your craft, develop your craft. And I think it's so important to develop it, to nurture it, to protect it as much as you can, and to kind of develop it in a way that makes it as strong and as unique as only you can make it, right? And I think that takes a certain amount of commitment and devotion and dedication. And you have to make space for that in your life. And if you can juggle the paid work with the writing, I think that you've got the pragmatic thing, and then you've got the creative thing going on. And I think it's those two that make it work, until you become so super successful and wealthy that you can do away with the sort of sideline, the side job, or whatever it might be. So yeah, I just think you have to be humble, you have to be patient, you have to be determined, and you have to work as hard as you can, knowing that you will work so hard for so little reward. You have to accept these things, but you've got to do it out of love. Like, you do it out of love, and you do it out of a passion. So I'm saying that that's the truth of it. It's really difficult, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. I sound like a complete liar.
I don't know. I'm kind of here for it a little bit, though, because I'm essentially I'm somebody who has been tethered to something or someone or some idea like my whole entire existence. Like I've always been about others and about sort of like a life of service in that way, that when I've gotten now to the stage where I'm old enough to really kind of investigate what brings me joy and what I really want to leave as a legacy in this world, in this space, I find that the traditional routes of, setting up actual roots, getting a house, getting a family, doing all of those things, they don't really appeal to me, which is a very difficult conversation to have when you come from a background like mine with the people around me. It's a very difficult conversation to have. So I think, honestly, there's something incredibly sort of, I don't know, adventurous about how you live your life for me. And I love it. And I'm so here for it. And I don't know, like, I would definitely like to understand what it is to find something that really kind of sits well, like right in the center of my soul, and motivates and lets me get up in the day and feels like this is what I'm here for in this kind of way. So like that's interesting to me.
And I think
very interesting.
What you say, I think that is also really interesting, is actually our backgrounds, and exactly family, not really entirely understanding why we do what we do, when that, like, with sort of immigrant family, my parents were immigrants, and so security is like the be all end all, right? And to do something so precarious is just absolute stupidity in their eyes. And it's a lot of conversation. There's so much conversation around trying to justify this chosen path with yourself because of the conditioning, because of the family and cultural conditioning that we are all subjected to, where it's like, I mean, I can't tell you how many, I've been so conflicted about it at times. Like, am I doing the right thing? Am I not doing the right thing? I should have a proper job. Why don't my cousins or whoever or so-and-so has a house and a car and a this and that? And what have I got to show for any of it? I'm still, it's hard. It's really difficult, but I think you have to be so convinced and, or just so on that journey that there's no turning back. There's a point of no return. And actually, I'm committed to it now. This is my commitment. Do you know what I mean? This is my commitment in life now. I love my family. I'm committed to my family. But this, for me personally, this is my commitment. Is my work, is my creativity, is my art, is my writing. And I need to like assemble my life around that, and I wish I was I'm so not a superwoman. So I have to focus on the one thing with monastic devotion, because I can't do the multitasking. I can't have kids. I admire women who can do that. I admire them so much, because I could never have done that, and it's really, this is why I'm like, I'm such an anomaly when it comes to giving a
No,
but this is how it is. And it's
yeah.
also with my family who, you know, they are, I mean, my parents, they're just like in a complete state of despair about where I've ended up. And
I'm sure they are. But you know what, Satinder? I think that there's another side to this though, and I guess this is with me with my activist hat on and my Asian for change hat on as well, really, because I think there's still a lot of work to be done in terms of equitable rates. I think there's still work to be done when we come to, you know, there's a lot of work that a writer does that is unpaid. You know what I mean? And actually, that you don't get that financial compensation for. So I think that there's still a lot of work. I would say there's, you know, I think there's one way of kind of seemingly accepting that, but I think there's another argument really in terms of the pressure that we should put on arts organizations, and there's just a sector in terms of paying writers sufficiently for their time.
Agreed. I mean, exactly. I mean, the overriding feeling that I get is, you know, whenever I'm given any sort of commission or any work, I know that I'm going to put 200% plus into that work, and it's never going to, the fee that I get for it is never going to be commensurate with the amount of work that I've put in. I just know that, you know, that is when it's not so, it's not a great commission fee to begin with. It's a struggle, you know, it's absolutely a struggle. And that's why you do need the second or third job, you know, to kind of keep going, because it is not properly paid. It is not adequately paid. And it's a stress, like it's a massive stress when you're working or not working. And you know, then you're looking for work, you're looking for more work, and it's just this constant cycle that it's
I think the UK can learn a lot from the US. I'm not saying the US are perfect, but I think there's definitely, when I see how much people are paid in terms of commissions or how much they get for awards as well, I'm looking at that and I'm like, why is that not happening in the UK?
Yeah,
and it's also sort of nuts to me as well when you think about, you know, it's almost like how we value the cultural importance and the contribution that you add, the value you add to our life with your work and with the dedication you have to your work. You know, like the arts have a possible, like they have the capability to change and to shift, you know, the dynamic, to change lives. And then you're coming there and you're saying that the practitioners that are supposedly doing this, being this impactful, are not worth significantly more than that when it comes to actually compensating them for their work. And that's just nuts to me. Like it's just, wow.
You know, there is another thing sort of just about funding. So I'm doing this, I'm basically developing a play with Hampstead at the moment, which is my play Lotus Beauty, which is set in a beauty salon, and it's about 5 multi-generational Asian women from like a suburban British Asian town. And that play's been going for a while, right? And it's literally been a 10 plus years journey trying to find the right home for it. And I've applied for Arts Council funding 3 times for that play, where I basically, you know, I just needed support. I just needed support to get it up, to get it out there, to just for a showcase. I got turned down for funding 3 times until Hampstead picked it up. And I have to say, Roxana Silbert, like, oh my God, kudos to her. Oh, she's amazing, right? She's amazing. And you know, her sort of first words to me, which I really loved, were, why haven't I heard of you before? Do you know, considering how long I've been writing for? Do you know? And that was okay, that's an aside, but that's also part of the problem. But you know, that's part of the problem in terms of, I have been in this profession and in the theatre world for so long, and it's almost like the fact that was the first time that I met Roxana, like a year ago. is insane that I've had sort of access to her, or that my work has got to her. And anyway, she took on the play, and I just think those years that I spent trying to get that funding, how much further along that play would be, or my other work would be, if I had just been given that support instead of just being adrift. And I'm not the only writer. I know I'm not the only writer like this, but it's just about having those supports in place so that we can tell these stories, you know. And this is about women in my community again. And, you know, it was trying to bring the work back into the community, and to a place like Southall that doesn't have theatre, you know, involving them, getting them to tell their stories, and all of this kind of thing. So it all just kind of together, the frustrations and the blips that we have to go through that really kind of impede us on our individual paths as well, where you just think, for some people, it's just been freaking smooth sailing constantly. The energy it takes to be turned down from something and to pick yourself back up, to get back to the work, you know, when you're dealing with sort of rejection after rejection or whatever it might be. It would just be such a dream world to just have support. You know? Dana walks in, you just go, oh my God, like, thank you.
Yeah, and it does matter. It matters who leads these organizations. It matters who's on the literary department teams. It matters, you know, who's advocating for who and their relationship. Like, so for instance, Carly's relationship with other organizations as well, and how our Black-led organizations and where they stand in the arts industry, so that they are able to provide leverage, you know, to the writers that they work with. So there's a lot there. I mean, we've covered a lot. We can cover so much more, like, in this conversation, Satinder, because you know that, you know, with that experience, you're able to kind of have more of a holistic sort of overview of the industry, and that's what we're leading with. So I think that it's the determination that we applaud. But I think more than applauding and telling someone to keep on going, so I had that a lot in my career. So we would just keep going, so just keep going. I was like, yeah, but I have no resources, I have no staff, it's just me. You know, but I do think it's really, really important that we acknowledge those who are paving the way for others. And so you're right. I mean, like, was Hampstead Theatre such an open organization, or, you know, a place where people felt that it could be potentially their home before that point? I don't know, maybe for a few, but not for many. So I think that's what happens when we do get that sort of the change in leadership, and that's what we're talking about, and that's what the 99-page documents in terms of anti-racism action plans and all of the things that other people are doing, that's what we are advocating for. But let's move on, because we don't have that much time and we need to move on. And I really want us to talk about, which is a really fun part of our Writers' Room episode, which is we ask all the writers to tell us what 3 plays they wish they would have read before they came into. You forgot about this bit, Satinder? I was like, oh yeah.
That's so funny.
We asked our writers to tell us 3 plays that they wish they would have read before they entered into the professional industry. And again, it could be written, the plays could be written at any time, really, but it's just the plays that they felt that had such a great and wonderful influence on their lives and their writing career to date. So Satinder, I'm going to hand over to you now.
So I did cheat a little bit on this, because I included 2 plays that I did come across before I started writing, but they've just, actually not 2 plays, because I'm going to explain to you, I cheated on that too. They became really relevant. So the first one is Enter Zake Shangaze, for coloured girls who have considered suicide. I came across that actually when I was studying, I was doing the drama course, but so it was before I became a writer. But the point being, it blew me away. It absolutely blew me away, and it just the fact that it's this amazing, like, experimental kind of avant-garde, innovative, just groundbreaking, like, text that, you know, it's dance, it's music, it's movement, it's poetry, it's just street, it's like high art, it's everything. And that text just shows the possibilities of storytelling in a way that I think, yeah, like I feel like I'm at that point now where I just want to explode what storytelling means. And I think that play, it's not even a play, I know it's described as a choreo poem, but you know, yeah, that would be the first one that I just think is. And there is a quote that I wrote down that I used to carry with me all the time. Wait, just because I love it so much.
Oh no, I'm living for this. That is one of my favorite plays as well. So
that line from it, being alive and being a woman and being colored is a metaphysical dilemma I haven't conquered yet.
Oh,
that line that stayed with me in my sort of early 20s. And you know, and all my three choices were African American texts, and I think that's really important. And I think this one in particular was really important to me because even though it was African American, it was about being a woman of color, and that it really spoke to me just on so many levels, and just encapsulated the experiences that I was going through as, you know, as a woman, as a creative. Anyway, just brilliant. So that was my first one, because I know we don't have a lot of time, so I'll race through them. The second one is not really a play, but it's Jean Toomer's Cane.
You are breaking all of the rules, Satinder. What's the point of having rules, right?
And that also was
Tim broke the rules, Satinder. You're okay.
Yeah. You know what? I've spoken about them before, like in a public domain. I was like, nope, this is my one opportunity, and I'm going to say how this texts have been. Jean Toomer's Cane, which is, again, it's prose, it's poetry, and it's drama. And again, it's a modernist text that is exploding and writing in sort of different forms. But I really can, and actually around the time of Zameen, I came across it when I was studying in the States, and I studied the Harlem Renaissance, and it was a real forgotten text during the Harlem Renaissance. And actually, I came across the Harlem Renaissance before I came back to England, back to that Asian cool scene. And it really was at a time where I was like discovering who I was as a British Asian. So identity-wise, massively important. But it's really interesting because it's about that journey, that African-American journey from the rural South to the urbanized North. And it's that great migration that all immigrant cultures sort of have taken part in, and especially for Punjabis. So much of that book just speaks to Punjabi culture as well. It's just beautiful. There's a haunting beauty of it in that book and I think he described it as a swan song to like rural Black folk culture. And in a way, it's that kind of swan song that's happening in Punjab, you know, as we become more urbanized and industrialized, globalized. There were certain things that we're just losing that are tied to the land and the soil, you know, to spiritual songs. Yeah, just really beautiful and just spoke to me in so many ways. And then the last text, because I know you're like, oh my God, we're running out of time.
No, it's good.
Oh,
Okay. I'm rushing through just because I'm like, my last is Anna Devere Smith. Mm-hmm. And it could be either Twilight, and this one I hadn't read before I became a writer, and it's been a recent one, either Fires in the Mirror or Twilight. And I have to say, because today is the 30th anniversary of Rodney King's beating in LA, so really, really, like, I can't believe it's been 30 years and how little has changed. So that Twilight, it was weird because I was thinking about it earlier and just thinking, you know, she wrote this incredible text, verbatim text, that took on this kind of polyphonic array of voices that tell you about the riots, you know, and I just love the politics of her work, but it's so rooted in community. And I really relate like Fires in the Mirror is set in, I think it was the Crown Heights riots in Brooklyn. And, you know, in Southall in 1979, we had a similar kind of uprising. It is called the Southall riots, but, you know, the National Front basically came to town before the election, and the whole town just shut down, got together to keep out the National Front. And it just, there's something about her work and the experiences that we have been through as a political community as well. Her work just really, really speaks to me. And I love the way that she brings in that multiplicity of voices, you know, and shows us that actually these community stories need to be told by many people. You know, sometimes one voice is not enough. We need to hear all the voices, and we need to hear them together so that we know the extent of, you know, the racism, the injustice, the discord in those communities to a bigger community, or even between those communities, you know. And yeah, I love her work, absolutely love her work, and I'm so inspired by the three of them. And
amazing recommendations, like seriously, so brilliant, so brilliant. Thank you so much, Satinder. That's great.
Yeah,
we're gonna do something which is this is the lightning round, so we're gonna do something. It's really great. Satinder, no long paragraphs, okay, and no soliloquies.
You get one word answers or one sentence answers only.
That's it.
And you get 10 seconds to answer each question. So you can't be thinking about it until next week.
I've had that as well. We've had someone say, I can't do it. I need more time. You know who you are.
You do know who you are.
Fly around once. Okay, go on. Let's try it.
All right, let's go.
All right. Okay, Satinder, what do you like to do when you're not writing?
Watching tennis or football. Roger Federer.
Yeah. Oh, we love Federer. Okay, cool. All right, compose them. The best play you've ever written?
I don't know. I don't think I've written it yet.
Oh. It's a little bit of a cheat, but whatever. Okay. Okay, if you could tell your younger self something, what would it be?
Get a paid job if you're going to become a writer.
What character in any of your plays do you relate to the most?
Oh, I think Chandani in Zameen. She was the farmer's daughter. I think I relate to her a lot. Yeah.
What is the best money you have ever spent as a writer?
On Roger Federer. Traveling the world watching Roger Federer. Awesome. No regrets. Wish I'd done it.
No regrets as well.
Any writing money that I've earned honestly has gone to like Roger. And
surely he needs to sponsor you. Surely for that.
Yes, he needs to sponsor you for certain.
Okay. Your favorite theatre?
My favorite theatre? Hampstead, because they took on my play when nobody.
Alright. One thing that makes for a good story.
Diversity.
Nice.
Okay.
If you could choose a writer to co-write with, who would you choose?
Oh, does it have to be a dramatist, or can it be anyone?
Anyone.
Oh, maybe Arundhati Roy.
Nice.
Name two of the greatest South Asian playwrights of all times, according to Satinder.
Oh my God, I don't think I've read enough. Wow, I have no idea. Oh my God, this is a tricky one. This is a really tricky one. I would say Tagore, because I think he wrote some plays. Asian. There's a dearth. This is the problem. There's a real dearth. So the other one I'm going to throw in is Hanif Qureshi, although I think he's a better screenwriter. So
okay, and last but not least, because we
need more South Asian dramatists, and we need, and actually there's a gap. There is a gap in history. We need to excavate more stories.
Satinder, that's more than one sentence. But breaking the rules again. Okay, one of the things that we have in common is our love for documentaries. So name your favorite documentary.
Oh, I love a documentary.
Oh, I don't know, but you know what I am going to say? I'm going to say for now, Toxification, because it really explains the farmers' protests. So go see Toxification if you can. All
right, that's it. It's a wrap.
Because it's lockdown, but it's on. You can find it, people.
We will find that. We will all watch it. Thank you so much, Satinder. That was so much fun. We loved having you on the Writers' Room. Please come back. We asked everyone to come back. We want you to come back.
Oh, I'd love to come back. Thank you, Sameelia. Thank you, Saru. What fun. And like catharsis as well.
It is very cathartic, very that. But yes, wonderful to have you, Satinder. And I'm really excited for this episode to go out into the world and for people to join in on the conversation. So people should chime in if they have any comments, anything to add, any other questions, so that we get in touch with Satinder some more. Definitely put them under there somewhere and we bring her back, which would be really amazing and spectacular. But this has been so great, and thank you so much, Satinder.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Lots of love, guys.
All right, take care.